everybody. Welcome to the Novel Idea Society for June. No, May, for May of 2026. I am in summer mode. It's 30 degrees in Regina right now. And
Oh,
so we are getting an early taste of summer. It has been all week. It's also like 60K winds. So it's kind of like stepping into a furnace outside right now. Um, our guest today, far out on the East Coast, is Bobbi French, who wrote The Brink of Something Beautiful, which I referred to as On the Brink of Something Beautiful for probably the first 2 weeks that I was reading, like looking into this and reading this. Um, and I have to say, everyone I've talked to about it has really enjoyed it.
oh, good.
How long did this book take you to put together?
It's always interesting when people ask this question because it's sometimes done in stages. The first book I wrote, which was The Good Women of Safe Harbor, that was written sort of very on, off, on, off. But this one was more straightforward. I would say maybe 8 months for the full draft.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, and then there's always back and forthing and changing and adding, and I refer to all my books as scabs because I just pick and pick and pick. I'm still editing this book in my head and it's out, like it's over, right? So I always say a year is probably a good thing to think about from start to finish is
And
probably a
this is
year.
this is book two for you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
How was writing this one different from book one? I know that that book won a lot of awards. It got nominated for a lot of things, and it's a lot of pressure to follow up your first book with a second book. So, did you change anything in your process as you were getting ready to release this one?
It's so funny. This is such a good question, Sam, because in the first round of book clubs with good women, everyone was like, "What's your process? Tell me about your process." And I was like, "Bitch, I got no process." Like, right?
My
Like
first book. I just
I
have
just
you got to
yeah,
finish.
yeah. And it turns out I have an odd process. So my process is I have an idea, I start with a character in some sort of scenario, and that's it. And then I just write it as it comes. And the finished book is as I wrote it. Like it just rolls out from there. So this time I thought I would be very fancy. And now I've got one good novel out and everybody loved it. I've got to, be a real writer. So I'm going to put, I have a board and I'm going to put, this, I'm going to put that. And I wasted 3 months doing all that and didn't write a word. Right.
Did it
And
help?
what's that?
Did it help?
Well, no, it just delayed me. I got nothing from it. And then I sat down with the character and I knew all I had was a woman whose husband's died and she's not necessarily unhappy about it.
Okay, so Ruby was the character you started with because I was going
Yeah.
to ask you where in your brain this story began because you have a lot of characters.
Yeah.
Main like you obviously have the two main characters, but you have a lot of we'll call them side quests who
Sure.
are also like semi-important characters. So how did your character development go?
Yeah. So as always, I listen, I sound like Elizabeth Strout, as always with my many novels, with my two novels. I'm always just starting with the inspiration point is always the reverence for the sisterhood, right? It's just all that we share, our wit, our wisdom, our struggles, the resilience, just this unique kinship. And that's what I'm interested in. And I'm not interested in heroines or saints. I'm interested in ordinary women who
Hmm.
are doing extraordinary things every day of their lives. And we all know this. And so I just kind of start with that. And I just started with the one person, this woman, and I really didn't know what was going to happen to her beyond that idea of the husband. And so I started writing it out, and oh, there's this kid at the thing at the funeral. And I said, "Oh yeah, okay, I want the young woman, older woman juxtaposition again, like I had in my first book." So I knew I wanted that. I really enjoy that. I don't think there's enough of that out there these days. The tension and the unique relationship that can evolve around women of different generations. Um, and so they're just there. And then the rest of them, they just pop in as I'm going along. I can only way I can describe it as like I'm in my room and I'm writing, and the door opens, and there's someone, right? I know I want more women in my book always. So however I can incorporate more women in. And I had a man in this one for the first time, which was interesting, which is a cop named Cal. And they just come, they just come, they just come.
I
They're
mean, Corey was a character too. You just mean
Corey's
you
the
only had
character.
one likable man.
Well, yeah, and I think, when I wrote the first draft of the Brink, Corey was very unidimensional. And I even made it was sort of a reference to my own process in the book. At one point, Ruby says, "Oh, it's so easy to make him the villain of the piece." And he was just a villain. And I realized that was my own notion. I just had to get that on the page. Okay, this guy's awful. He represents all the awful men in the world doing awful things to my beloved sisters. And so then I realized, no, he has to have more dimension. And of course, in my previous life as a psychiatrist working with families and right.
I was going to ask you about that. That was going to be my next question is how much of your
Yeah,
previous life came into this book?
yeah. It's an interesting thing. I call it cheating because people will say to me, "Oh, your characters are relatable and really developed and really, what do you do for development?" And I go, it's in my head. Like you spend 20 years in people's most intimate space. You know about people's motivations, what makes them do things that are good for them, things that are not so good for them, families, relationships. I worked with children and adolescent psychiatry for many, many years, so families are in there. So it's really not a lot of work for me. It's a total 100% cheat. Now, I did spend 15 years.
Cheating if you did the work. You just did the
Yeah.
work differently than other authors would do the work.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So, because I didn't start to write, I didn't write anything till I was, 47, 8 years old, whatever. I don't know what it was. Never wrote a piece of fiction in my life.
What made
Um,
you walk away from psychiatry? You said former life. Does that mean you're not doing it anymore?
yeah, so I ran away. I lost my mind about, I think it was 2016, 2015. I lost my mind. I said, okay, I can't do this anymore. I had a bunch of health concerns, and I knew that these health issues were going to be more and more and more down the road. And I had gone from high school to university to med school, no break. And my husband had traveled the world and did a semester in Spain and a semester in France. And I was so envious. And I said, I want to see the world. So we packed up everything we owned, sold it all off, and took off to France for a while and bummed around. And I said, okay, that's it. My life is different now. And so then, after the European adventure, we moved to out west, and I worked adjacent to children. I worked with oversight of child welfare. And then I hit a massive health decline, massive, and it just bottomed out, and I couldn't work anymore. And I was at home going crazy because what am I going to do? And I'm using crazy, small c crazy, not to insult mental illness. I just do the word crazy. Yeah. I'm losing my mind. And I decide I read 100 books a year. Every time I close it, I say, oh, I wish I could write a novel, but I can't because I remember that time in grade 8 when I had to do a short story and I didn't do very well on it. And so, of course, like many women, I carry this failure through my whole life, nurture it, love it until it becomes this massive false belief about myself. And I said, well, girl, you didn't even try it, right? So what do you want you to try one? And that was how I got to Good Women. And then I said, well, I got to try another one now, right? And the pressure, you mentioned the pressure. Oh man,
You
it was
felt it?
rough. It's
You felt
rough.
it?
Oh, you know what I felt? I did over 100 book clubs for that book. And the love for that character, Frances, her name is Frances, was so thick and strong. And this book was bringing friends together after 20 years apart and changing people's feelings about assisted dying and all the rest of it. It's like, gee whiz, because, you know, and she was such an easy character to love because she suffered terribly in her life. She had a significant mental illness. She had multiple cumulative losses, and now she was dying. And it was the process of her seeking agency through that process. That was the story. No spoiler, she dies at the end. And so it's a very emotional read. And so you'll know this if anyone wants to read The Good Women
I
of
love
Safeguard.
your dark sense of humor because I relate to it so well. And it comes from like me spending 20 years in the media. The way that we talk
Yeah.
about things that make most people uncomfortable probably don't help them feel any more comfortable. But the
Yeah.
fact we're like, spoiler alert, she dies, moving
Spoiler
on.
alert, she does at the end. The whole story revolves around her seeking a death of her own choosing. So there you go. And so the pressure for me was, how do I remind readers of my first book that, you know, we love Frances, but she is dead. She's moved on. And so now we're going to put her aside and let's not compare, right? Because people do compare books. I wish readers, I try not to. I try to, when I read a book by another author, I try to say, okay, this is a totally different experience. This is a totally different story. And I'm going to take each one as it comes, even of my most favorite authors. Like every Carol Shields book I've read, I would say, okay, this is a new one. This is different.
Bobbi,
So,
that wasn't your first book though. And it's funny because you
yeah.
talked about going to France.
Yeah.
And I was reading about you earlier today and I went, oh my God, I have read her actual first book,
Oh, the
which was
France book. Yeah.
yes, because when I was in university, I became obsessed with, because like you, I did the whole like high school, university. Like I felt like I was in university forever. I did 2 degrees. And then I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to see the world. And so I was reading a lot about other people who did maybe what I was thinking about doing. So that wasn't your first book. That was your first work of fiction.
Yes, you're right. I always forget about that little book. It's just a fun little romp. I always call it the toilet book because it's written in little short inserts. You could take it to the bathroom. But again, talking about things that make people uncomfortable. But anyway, um,
They're
it's a
giggling along in here. It's fine.
yeah,
You haven't made anyone, no one's left yet, so you're good.
yeah, it's okay. I'm a doctor, trust me. So it was just based on the blog, right? Like I had this blog and all it was just me writing little funny stories for my friends. And it became this big thing. Like people all over the world were reading it and it won these blog awards and everything. And I was like, what is going on? And a publisher in Newfoundland called me and said, "Listen, do you want to put it together in a book?" I'm like, "Yeah, that'd be great." And it was fun and it was exciting and my husband's all through it with goofy pictures of him and so it's a fun little book, but it is a I think um, a kind of living the dream type of thing, but in a very realistic way. It's not. I don't gloss over it. It wasn't easy at times to do.
It's not Eat, Pray, Love, which does kind of gloss over some of it.
No, it was, sitting around reading books, decompressing from 20 years, 15 years of university and then, 15 more in the trenches of the Canadian mental health care system. Um, I needed to when I say unwind, I mean like I was a coil, right? I needed to really unwind. I didn't take breaks for my health like I should have, like people tend to now. It was frowned upon in medicine. You didn't do that.
Well,
And
you're a woman in medicine, so your pressure
oh,
was higher.
oh. But also there's an obligation. At times I would have 500 kids on my roster. I mean, I once had such a serious health condition. I don't mind telling you. I actually broke my neck and I didn't.
Can I ask you how you broke your neck? If
Yeah,
you're
I
telling me
was
you broke
I
your neck,
was
I need to know.
renovating. I was renovating and I was cleaning, doing the ceiling of tiles, right? I'm a big tall lady and I have bad discs anyway. And I had my neck craned and the next day I got up and there was something wrong and it wouldn't get better. And I went and I had a massive disc out and it was pressing on my spinal cord to the point where one night I woke up and I couldn't move my arms. Like it was critical, the whole thing, right? And so I go to the doctor and he says, okay, yeah, I'm sharpening the knife. We're doing this today. And I said, I hear you. How about you give me 3 days and I just got to get my work sorted. Like I got to get my kids looked after, right? And that was the mentality. And that's what I did. I actually did that. Walking around for a whole
Because
week.
you don't want to be an inconvenience to your patient.
I want my patients to get care. And okay, I don't want to veer off into spouting about health, but okay, maybe I will. The mental health care system, in Canada is just awful. It's so under-resourced and so, and I really cared for these people. I really had the honor and privilege of looking after these people. I never wanted to be a doctor. It was not the career I wanted. It was the career my parents wanted for me. But I still gave it everything I had, because that's my personality,
Your
right?
dedication is to, I always struggle with the words for this, victims, survivors, people on the other side of intimate partner violence. How did that work your way into the story? And then I also want to ask you about the opening scene, because it's not often that a book hooks me from the opening, but yours did. So let's talk about the intimate partner violence part, and then we'll talk about
Yeah,
if she killed her husband or not.
yeah, sure. Yeah. So the thing for me is, we were talking about how the book came about, and I always say that the two things pushed this book into the world, love and rage. So you heard the love part, right? My reverence for the women, and particularly the women of Newfoundland and Labrador, right? Who are their own cluster of greatness, and all the women who've encouraged me. But my rage, I had this white hot fury around gender-based violence. And I've worked with it. I've worked with it for many, many years. I have seen the most horrific things happen to women, and particularly in my experience, girls. And you know, I mean, half the population of the planet, more if you think of women and girls, have been living under some sort of siege, right? Since the dawn of time. And here we are now, and this is the reason I set the book in 1999, because I wanted the book to ask this question, you know, is it any better? Because we still have this ticking tally of discrimination and heinous assault and murders. And it expands, right? Because it expands out. We talk about just women, but what if we start talking about, Indigenous women, and then we start talking about, brown and black women, and then we start talking about trans women. Oh my God, where are we? Right? And so the rage I have, and I think this book is my way of just asking that question in the world. Is it any better?
It's interesting you
And
talk about the timing in 1999,
yeah.
because at different points in the book, I couldn't remember
Mm,
exactly when it was set. And I was like,
mm,
is this in the 60s? Is this set now? Because there's different things that happen in the book that you're
mm,
like, this wouldn't happen today. But then
mhm,
there's other things in the book that you're like,
mhm,
this absolutely could happen today. So
mhm.
I waffled on the timeline a lot on when it was actually set, because there's also the difference between rural and urban Canada too, right? And the
Mm.
way things move, and the way with which things are acceptable or not don't necessarily move as quickly to the rural areas. And like, no disrespect to people who live in rural areas, but it's just
Yeah,
that things just don't change as quickly
yeah,
in those smaller communities. So I really
yeah.
did go back and forth on that timeline.
Oh, I'm really happy to hear that. That's really pleasing to me. I didn't do that on purpose, but the fact that you were lost in time really speaks to my point, I think, of that. The obvious answer is no, it's not. It's not much better. In fact, on many fronts, it's worse. If we look at our neighbors to the south, wow, wow,
That's a great way of summing it up, actually. Wow.
wow.
Wow
Let's
or yikes.
Yikes,
Short words.
Afghanistan. The women of Afghanistan, the women of South Sudan, the women of Congo, the women next door, the women we work with, our daughters, or whatever, right? And so for me, I think the book was a bit of a protest for me, right? I'm a person living with multiple disabilities. I'm not out in the world like, mixing it up and, you know, so I'm saying like, make it stop. But I think the other thing is that it's also my way of trying to find and hopefully project some hope in this whole mess. Um, and people will say to me, "Oh, I'm so glad you gave the book a happy ending." I said, "I don't think that's not a happy ending. It's a hopeful ending.
Well, I think what you had in the ending
Hopeful."
is a recognition that there's still kindness in the world that people can take advantage of, and that they feel comfortable taking advantage isn't the right word, but do you know what I mean? In that
Yeah.
she felt like that kindness was extended to her in a way that she could go back or do that. And I mean, that is a spoiler for people who haven't finished the book. But I also I found that it was a happy ending, but it wasn't. And it was only happy in that you knew that there was going to be some satisfaction in a way there.
Maybe. Yeah.
And
Or time.
satisfaction isn't necessarily happiness. It's
Correct.
just satisfaction.
Well, and also, I don't solve anything in the end of this book. That's no spoiler because you know what? When we know anyone who's worked with this population, people leave abusive partners 25 times. People leave and abusive partners follow them and find them. People leave and there's custody around. I mean, just because you've left something or decided you're going to leave it doesn't mean it's going to, that's the end. In fact,
Mhm.
very often, well, we know that's a very risky time. This is when women get murdered, when they leave abusive partners and so on. So certainly the peril that women and children or women and girls live in is a really big thing for me in my work in my life, but also being a postmenopausal and proud of it. Rager, I call it the postmenopausal rager. Clap it for me,
You
ladies.
should
Any
have a
ladies?
bumper sticker.
Yeah, no, I am basically a 6 foot column of rage 24/7 because of my poor husband, right? You know, I had to stop reading the news because, but you know what? Why not? How else are we going to get anything done? You know, what was this thing I saw the other day? Bless the angry women who will change their world, use their fury to change the world, you know? And let's hope so. And the only way I can do it is by tic-tacking away on my little stories, right? Um, but you asked me something else. Oh yeah, you asked me about the first chapter,
I
and
want to talk about that opening
yeah,
scene, that
yeah,
moment of hesitation over the phone where she realizes, go, that might be okay. Huh. And the fact that she hesitated, where you just know so many people who've been in that situation where that call has absolutely saved that person's life.
sure.
She waited and she pondered it and she waited and she pondered it. And even if he had survived, I don't know, he would have never known that she hesitated because in that state, people aren't conscious of what's going on with their body. But what gave you the idea for that?
I gave a couple of things. Well, again, I don't think things out very well. So what happens sometimes, and my husband finds this really interesting because I can't ever explain it very well. Because he'll say, well, how did you ask me the same thing? I say, I don't know. It was out on the page before I really thought about it. So it's like I'm there with him and I'm just,
In the room.
it's just, yeah, it's just coming out. And so I thought I had it there and I thought, oh, that's kind of interesting. But I do know this. I am more and more interested. And again, this is my postmenopausal state. Um, am more and more interested in women who are very multidimensional, who are fleshed out, who are not solely good or bad or likable or not. I'm not interested in those things. I'm interested in,
The complexities of how we are
yeah,
as humans
I'm
that
interested
interact with
in,
each other.
yeah, I'm interested. Can I say a sort of bad word? I'm interested in the whole shit storm that people live
Oh,
in.
girl, that's the worst swear you've got. Come on. I
Well,
was
I don't
expecting
know. I don't
worse.
want to be saying anything really
You're
good.
fine. We're all adults. It's fine.
But most women, I always say this. This is what I always say. If you ask any woman, and I mean any woman in the room with you now, any woman you've ever met, the right questions, you'll get a story worth writing down.
Mhm.
This is what I know from my years of working with people asking the right questions. And that's why psychiatry is a cheat, because you know the right questions to ask to really draw people out. But I just wanted someone who, if I asked her the right questions, she'd tell me a really interesting story. And I think that's a really interesting thing to be in that moment with your husband on the floor And then now you do learn things about, as the book goes along, about how difficult his life is and how, I don't want to give any spoilers, but how he had times where he didn't want to be around and he was really suffering. And I don't think it was a totally selfish moment for her. I think it was a really complicated moment. And we live in complicated moments, women. How many decisions do women have to make in the run of a day between kids, aging parents, this, that, the other? I mean, it's a lot.
Have you ever had a patient though who has said to you, who's been in that situation where they have made that call and said, I wished I let him die? Because I did wonder that.
Okay, I I can't tell you about any specific patient ever.
But
What I will tell you,
anecdotally speaking, have you had
well, yeah,
conversations like
like
that?
let's talk hypothetically.
Yes.
What I can tell you is I have heard it all. All
So
right.
yes, you've heard something like that.
I have heard variations of that. I think, some, and just to make this disclaimer, I do not mine my patients for material for my books. If
Okay.
anything, it's always an amalgam. So I've never heard this specific story, but I've heard variations of everything that someone could think in a crisis. I also think that she panicked, right? And
Well,
I've
you
heard
do.
tons of stories of panicked people who panic and people. I tell you what I have heard a lot though in psychiatry is people who recognize when somebody's life has become so burdensome that they've had to leave it of their own hand. So a lot of suicides, I can tell you all of that. And that's where you hear the things of, you know what, I'm not sad for that. I'm not sad they're gone. Or, I've seen mothers with their dying children. I used to do a lot of consult work on children's cancer wards. And sometimes the mother would say to me, is it really wrong to be relieved? And I would say, oh, mama, no. Mama, no. Nothing's wrong here. Right? Because it's also complicated. And the question becomes, does she want him gone because he's an annoyance to her? Because this guy, for her, he's been both anchor and haven, right? Like young, when they're young, he's the haven, and now he's an anchor. And it's not that she doesn't care for him. It's not that she doesn't respect or feel grateful to him. It's just she doesn't love him, right? She doesn't feel that for him the way he feels it for her. And I believe that about 50% of relationships function in that space myself, you know, um, but I've heard it all. I mean, psychiatry is one of those careers that it's so bound by confidentiality, and yet you have the best shit ever to tell anybody, right? You
If
cannot believe what people come in and tell you in the office. It's fantastic. And it's as it should be. People should be able to come in and tell how they want to kill their spouse. Now, no, not seriously, but that they want to talk about, I mean, and she does
better
later.
to talk about it than to do it.
Absolutely. My job to talk them out of it. You know, um, I'm not making light of any of this, but
No, I know what you, yep.
it's a really good question that you're asking. Like, do people go through this? Yes, they do. Yes, they do go through these situations in different types of things. And I don't know. Life's hard.
Well, and you add that dimension of fertility to it,
Yeah,
which you could have just left it at where
yeah.
it was. But she also has suffered a lot of loss. And I
Mm,
think of the scene at the hospital near the end, which gives nothing away. And there was a time in my life where I would see a hospital and had that same feeling of,
mm,
I really don't want to walk in there because the smells, the sounds, like I've since gotten over it because I now see it as a place of life and death and getting better and or like I don't when I was younger, it was every time I went to the hospital, somebody died. And so I just had
Mhm.
no desire to be near a
Yeah,
hospital.
that's
But then
awful.
as you get older and your friends start having babies or people get sick and they get better, you can see that the hospital's not one dimensional, but when you're younger and
Sure.
all you've experienced is death. And so I understood her moment of, I don't know if I can do this. And not because I don't want to be in the situation that's needed of me, but because I have been through my own shit. And I don't know if I can put that aside in this moment.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And I do hope that that comes across in the book is Ruby's suffering because she has suffered a lot. I mean, the experience, not to spoil her because I won't spoil her this, but there's an experience that she has in this book that is so heartbreaking. Um, and I don't know. What you have to understand is being raised in Newfoundland. I always say we're raised on fish and guilt, right? Because it's we were raised in the fist of the Catholic Church, and it's really hard to explain to the non to the mainlanders, right? But the Newfs, we know that it was all consuming this church thing, and the core of it was guilt and sin, and it was awful, right? It was just awful. I'm not stepping on anybody's faith. I'm just talking about my experience. Don't send me an email. I'm just saying that it was awful. For me, it was awful. Guilt, guilt, guilt. And I think somewhere in the book, Ruby says that her marriage is tied together, grief and guilt, pity and penance. And these things are the drivers for her. And so here she's being driven to these fertility nightmares by this guilt and to please other people. And she's caring for her mother, and she couldn't save her mother. She's absolutely, what's the snowed under with guilt. And I think that's a theme that's carried through from my first book as well. And it's probably something that I'll be in anything I write because I think it's so damaging and so burdensome. And that is one thing in psychiatry I've been, you know, ah, just it's a killer. It
Mhm.
drives people right into the ground. And
You talked, you talked about growing up in Newfoundland. Um, I've noticed both your books are set there.
mm,
I know they say write what you know, but was it
mm.
important for you to set your books on the East Coast? You could have set them anywhere.
Sure. No, very important. So, obviously there's a nostalgia piece. So I haven't lived home for a while, a long time. And so writing is a homecoming. And, you
Where do
know,
you live now?
I live in Halifax right now, or not
Oh,
Halifax, no, rural Nova Scotia. I live in rural Nova
okay.
Scotia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You're still on the
So,
East Coast.
but I haven't lived in Newfoundland for years. And so it's a homecoming, right? And I get to spend time there, which is great. And of course, I want to I want to write as a nod to my beautiful storytelling culture. Um, but really, it's about this, and I've thought about this because people ask me this question. I think back to when I first read February by Lisa Moore, and if you haven't read it, guys, like please do. It's this you know um, fantastic massively important piece of Canadian fiction and was globally recognized as such. It was, winner of Canada Reads, it was the New Yorker, one of their book of the year, it was the Man Booker Prize list, the whole thing. But I was reading it and this wildly beautiful meditation on loss, but it's also the story of a Newfie woman having a rough go. And I'm reading it, and in these pages are me, my sister, my mother, her friends, our city, our sea, but more importantly, our language, our dialect
Mm,
represented on the page proudly. And it was such a stunning revelation to me that number one, that book existed. And then that number two, it was a global sensation. There was an appetite for stories about us on our island. And it really changed how I looked at books and it really changed how I looked at myself. And so, you know, um, however many years later, when I sit down to write my hand, try my hand in fiction, I couldn't imagine writing about anything else. And the most beautiful thing, I think one of the most beautiful things in my life has happened with this book. And Lisa Moore herself agreed to read the book and offer, the blurb, the praise. And she sent when my editor sent me the email with what she wrote, and it was a big paragraph. Oh, I could hardly breathe. I think it's one of the greatest gifts I've ever received. And I was saying to someone the other day, I feel like if I never do anything else of value in my life, there's that. I have that.
Oh, does
And
she know how much you mean to her or that she means to you?
I wrote her a thank you. I mean, I went to school with her sister and I've met her a couple of times, but as an adult, I don't know her. I wrote her a long email of thanks, telling her that, anybody writing about women in Newfoundland does so in your debt. And I told her, I was trying to, I mean, it took me days to write the email because I was just like, oh my God, like, Lisa Moore, Lisa Moore. I mean, what was I actually have it. I have to hear it all the time because it's so, I forget what she said. Like, she's like, I cannot think of the last time I've read such a multifaceted evocation of what it means to love with everything you've got, despite all the risks. This will be the best book you read this year and for a long time afterward. What is going on? Like, what is going on in my living room, right? And my husband is like, what is happening? I was like, need some more. Um,
You're crying. Don't mind me,
yeah,
you're crying.
I mean, February is one of my, on my top 10 of favorite books of all time and everything she's written after. And I love her. And she's a big social justice warrior. And so I love her. And so it was really a surreal and wonderful moment. So that's my long answer to hell yes, I'll be writing about The Rock because also I mean, if you're going to write about women, the women of The Rock are really interesting. They're fantastic. They're tender and sharp and funny and fierce and messy and brilliant. And I think there's a comparison between the island and the women. There's this rugged glory of that setting. And people, from a book sales point of view, people really like reading about Newfoundland. They like the phrasing, they like the stuff. So there's that.
It's funny though that as much as it is a character, the setting is a character, I found that this story could have been set on the prairies. Like I found the way the women interacted with each other reminded me a lot of things that you could see here. And I think the way you describe that describes a lot of prairie women too, where you're in a unique setting with a unique set of challenges that is not, it's not like even living in a big city on the prairies is not the same thing as living in Montreal, Vancouver, Toronto.
No,
Like the way
no,
of
no.
life, the temperature, the economy, like everything is so different. And I think that there's something really relatable about that to people who live here, and even the going to Fort McMurray to make money. Like I think of the oil patch and how many people either went to Estevan in the southeast
Yes.
or they went up to Fort Mac to make
Yeah.
money. And that was huge. Even I would say it was still really huge even up until the fire in Fort McMurray
Yeah,
and
I
out.
still have family there. I have family in Fort Mac, I chose Fort Mac very specifically because this is where the Newfs went, and the young fellas went out there, and because you know what, once we had a Cobb moratorium, we had there was and these were guys who really wanted to work and wanted to do well, and it's funny because I had to wade in to Goodreads because there was someone, which I never do. Someone was saying that, oh, I think the author doesn't like Alberta very much. And I was like, what? Yeah, I said, no, no, no. This is a fictional account of one gal's heartbreak who had a bad time that happened to be in Fort Mac. I have, in fact, it's funny you say about the prairies. I have this strange fan base in Alberta.
It's
So,
relatable. It is
yeah,
relatable to
like,
the climate and it's not the
yeah.
same, but I think it's relatable. I don't know if the people in the room agree with me or not. I'm getting nods, yes. That it was really relatable in that way. Um, so now you're an author full time. Is this how this goes now for you?
Well, I'm a broken down giraffe of a woman a lot of the time.
I'm
My
also tall, and I am now going to use that every time I hurt myself. A
I
broke down giraffe. Oh
I
my
am a
God.
broke down giraffe. I'm telling
It
you.
is me in a
The, the,
nutshell. I
the
love
joke,
that.
yeah, the joke is I'm a part-time writer and a part-time giraffe wrangler because my health concerns take up a lot of my time. But yeah, that's what I do now. And I wouldn't I mean it's very rewarding. I mean, I don't think it's a good way to make a living in Canada, but it's very rewarding. And so luckily my husband's willing to foot the bill for the giraffe feeding and
What does he do? What's your husband do?
my husband is a advertising guy. He's an art director slash brand architect, and so he's had a long career in that. And now he is a freelancer, does his own thing, and so which is very lucky for me because I need a lot of help in my life these days, and I'm very fortunate. And he cooks, and I do not, and I wouldn't even know how to turn on the stove. And I'm not joking. I literally do not know. He has an induction stove.
Oh, I wouldn't know what to do with that either.
Well, I don't know
I
anyway.
would break it and then you'd be mad at me. This is a blue job now.
It's a
That's what
kindness, actually. It's a kindness, right? It's a kindness. Listen, I won't come in your kitchen, right? You just, so I'm being kind to him, really, by letting him do all the cooking. So it's, yeah, no, I seem to be doing it full time. Now, there's a lot of downtime in between. So, for example, I had to read this book when it came to me. And they send it to you in a box, your copies of your book. I mean, it'd been 2 years.
oh
You
wow.
wait so long. Your books sit at the publisher for ages, and my book got delayed. Which was unfortunate because it was supposed to come out in February, that nice quiet time. But no, 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 no. Let's release this quiet Newfie book in the midst of porny hockey and I mean, Jesus, it's crazy now. You can't nobody can get a look in with anything, right? So yeah.
Or an email hockey. That I love that everyone knows what you're talking about. You don't even have to say heated rivalry. It's
Listen, not only heated rivalry.
but she's an East Coaster too, is she not, Rachel
Yeah,
Lee?
she lives in Nova Scotia. She does. And she's also a writer with disability. So good for her.
Does she has
Uh,
Parkinson's, I believe?
she does. She does. And then we had the Carly Fortune right behind. And I was just like, come
Yeah.
on. I can't cope.
But
And
you
I'm just
have a great little community of women out there that can support each
great.
other too. That's something I've really learned
It's great.
connecting. I don't know how this happens, and maybe it's because I gravitate to it, like honestly, and maybe it's the publishers also unintentionally pushing me in that direction. But I always seem to end up with women authors, and they all know each other. And so I find out that like I'll follow them on social media and all of a sudden they're out for drinks together and they have this like wonderful little community where they blurb each other's books and they talk on podcasts.
It's
I just thought it's
yeah.
just so lovely.
It is. It was surprising to me because, certainly male writers are very cutthroat and this and that and the other thing. When I started writing and reaching out to people, like there's a time when your book comes out and you have to reach out to people for blurbs and support and to help you. And like I remember writing to Charlene Carr, who's a lovely East Coast writer as well, and she's very got two beautiful books out and she's very successful. And I said, listen, I know you got kids and you got no time, but you know what? If you get time, and she wrote back and said, you know what? I'm slammed. I said, listen, cool. I said, but if you ever need anything from me, now we've connected. It's great. And so then she had a sudden gap in her schedule or something. And she wrote me back and said, I couldn't put the book down. I just started it. And then and so she worked through, the kids and just to give me this little thing. And I keep running into supportive people, supportive women who want everybody's book to do well, wants everybody to write a bestseller, wants everybody to be, happy and successful, and doesn't rag down anybody's success. I'm really happy for these hockey gals. I mean, if you told me that women were going to be crazy watching gay hockey porn, I never would have believed it. The only thing I
My
don't
husband still doesn't believe it.
I
The look on his face when he
yeah,
came into the room when I was watching that show, he's like, what are you watching? I was like, oh, it's Heated Rivalry. He's like, are you sure this is a TV show? Like, what? And every time he'd come into the room, they were in some sexual act. And he was like, I don't believe you, there's a storyline. I don't actually think this has a storyline.
And don't tell me this is a Canadian book. Don't tell me. Yeah. But here's the thing. I mean,
I'm
the
so
only
sorry. I I'm sorry to interrupt, please.
Oh, you have a question?
I've raised my hand for some time and I thought you would.
Oh, sure. No, go ahead. Go ahead with your question.
Yeah, sorry, I was wondering, I just wanted to make sure maybe I'm in the wrong class, right? And what the idea of the class is. Is it a book review you're doing, or is it for people who are interested in writing or something? Maybe I'm in the wrong place.
Oh, I will let Lily's gonna respond to you in the chat if that works for you.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Um, this is what happens when new people come to book club, but they don't know what book club is. Because we're partnered with the library and sometimes they try something new.
yeah, good for them. We
Yeah,
welcome.
which is great, which is great.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
it's the only thing I would say we were talking about these things. The only thing bothers me a little bit about it is I don't like when books are coming out and people are buying books solely based on TV shows or movies.
100%. They're not the same. They're never
It,
the
it
same.
it's different. It's difficult because there's so much hype and so much free advertising and things that other writers we don't have access to that stuff, right? Like it's really hard. I don't think people fully understand about how hard it is to spread the word and get, people to know about your book. And it's so grateful to people like you who invite me so graciously to come do something like this because it really helps. But it's a tough slog out there. It really is. And I'm so happy for these gals because what's happened is the TV shows have helped people buy their back catalogs, which is great.
Mm,
But at the same time, I don't want to see the Canadian Canada taken over because, to be honest with you, women writing commercial fiction in Canada, it's only very recently that we're being acknowledged and on bestseller lists and doing well financially because it's always been the Giller books and the very high level books and
I don't want to call it snooty, but it's been kind of snooty.
it's very snooty. I don't mind calling
And
it
now
snooty.
it's a little less snooty
It's
now
hella
because
snooty. Yeah.
now we're finally acknowledging the books that people actually read instead of the books. And no disrespect to these award-winning books. I'm sure
Mm.
some of them are great, but those are not the books that I gravitate to. They never are. And I think it's great that the books that people are actually reading and the authors that write them are finally getting the attention that they deserve instead of like, I've won some snooty whatever award and it's a book that appeals only to the highest brow of audience, which is something that I've always been really cognizant of in this book club is I want to pick books that I want people to read. And I never pick the same kind of book month to month the same because the point of being in a book club, in my opinion, is to get outside your John Grisham reading. Like you read the same author that puts out the same book once a year. No disrespect to Mr. Grisham, but you know what I mean, where it's like we're trying to widen the scope of what people read. And sometimes you're
Yeah.
very pleasantly surprised about the characters you meet in these stories.
Yeah, every now and then I wander around and see I saw something recently. I think they're actually reading Good Women and or no, it was Brink and she was saying, "How do I not know about this person? I love this writing. I love this book, but how do I not know? How do I not know?" And I'm screaming in the computer, "I wish you knew," because it's really hard. It's you have to cut through all the noise and not only that, we need to really encourage people to buy Canadian in every aspect. So, out here in Nova Scotia, we don't buy any of the booze, we don't buy any of this, we don't buy any of that. We're doing all that stuff. But rather than being political about it, it just needs to be about, I have a list here. I have a list here, and I think, people ask me favorite books, and I always have to have a list because my memory's
I
shot.
love that you have a list ready because usually I get a blank stare and oh, I had no idea you were going to ask me this
Listen,
question.
my whole life is a list and post-its. I'll tell you why. Because the minute, you stop having all these pesky periods, which is fantastic, but you do have to cope with the beard and the memory loss. That's the
Oh,
deal.
the brain fog is the worst. I'm just
It's
getting
the
into it. Let
worst.
me tell you, I've
It's
never felt dumber in my life.
well,
But
I
that's not what we're here to talk about.
no, but we could. Um, I'm just looking at, I go through like Stone Diaries or anything by Carol Shields, February, Lisa Moore, A Fine Balance, um, Gin, Turpentine, Pennyroyal Rue, which by the way is one of the best books you will ever read out of this country. I'm sorry.
What
I'm
a
just
crazy
take,
title.
take a moment. This is it. It's backwards, I know.
No,
Gin.
it looks right on our
Oh, is
screen.
it?
We're good. Yeah.
Gin, Turpentine, Pennyroyal Rue, Christine Higdon, I Want to
What's it
Kiss Him.
about?
Oh, everything. It's about four sisters set in 1920s Vancouver and
Oh.
four women trying to live and love in a time with no agency and no rights. And it is fantastic. It has lovely queer elements. It has the abortion. It has all these social things and the most beautiful story and a mystery going through it, a crime mystery and beautiful language. It's one of my favorite books of all time. Here it is right here. Um, and again, this beautiful woman, she asked me to write a blurb for her book, and because she wrote one for mine, and goes back to that supportive thing. But my point I'm saying is that I go through all these books. I think, well, more than half of them are Canadian writers. So the interesting thing for me, is that there's so much here to love about CanLit, Canadian fiction. And be it a sexy hockey thing, be it some kind of women's book club book like mine, or the snooty high literature, it's all there.
Mhm.
So I would just hope that people branch out, as you say. So I'm really appreciative of what you're doing because people would never hear of me, people would never hear of my book. I would love for everyone in Saskatchewan to buy a copy. That would be nice.
Do we have any questions in the room before I start winding things up? What is your question? Okay, she says, you mentioned that your parents chose your career as a doctor.
Yes.
She wants to know if you wanted to be an author when you grew up or if you wanted to be something else.
I wanted to be something else. I wanted Okay, this is a bit embarrassing. I wanted to be a stage performer. I wanted to perform in my dream job was like Second City or SNL or funny plays. I wanted to be a theater performer. So much so that I had my audition tape. It was a Chekhov piece, and I was in drama club at school, and I had it all ready to apply to Ryerson in Toronto to go off to the art thing, and I mentioned it at the dinner table
Oh
um,
no.
in my house.
To parents who want you to be a doctor
And once
and you
the
want to go into
firemen
the
put out
arts.
the fire, once
Ooh.
no, it was really bad, and it was very clear that that was not going to happen. And I was a very obedient kid. I think I look at young people now and I go, they wouldn't even have that. They would just be, but again, the church and the culture, it's obedience and all those things. And so I went to school and that was the deal. And or I would have loved to have worked in something with movies, not necessarily like making movies. I was my first love too, along with side books, was like my first job was in a video store. And I was that weird 15, 16-year-old kid who would come up, have you seen this latest French film? It's all about, and they said, no, we just want to watch the Mel Gibson. I said, oh, okay, great. Have you seen this beautiful Polish director?
Most
And I
people don't
was,
even know the joy of a movie store. Like they really don't. That was an event in
oh,
itself. Like that, the time you probably spent less time in a video store than you do going through all these stupid streaming services being like, what are we gonna watch tonight?
yeah,
Where you'd go in, you'd talk about it, you'd ask for
yeah,
recommendations from the
yeah,
people working.
yeah.
You might roam the 99-cent aisle because you're like, what could I pick up to watch later in the week? Like
It's
none of those
fantastic.
experiences exist anymore.
Yeah, I wanted to be a performer. I was a kind of a funny kid, a goofy kid. And I remember getting that feedback from my mom, who was, my mom is, she meant well. But she was like, well, you're very tall. And people from Newfoundland, and there's always a thing in Newfoundland, in small places. Well, nobody from Newfoundland makes it in the movies. Well, okay.
You could be the first.
I don't want to make it in the movies. I don't even want to be a movie star. I'd like to be in a theater. I want to be performing, you know? So that's what I wanted to do.
That's
Um,
not embarrassing. You also have a very sharp wit, so I would say don't give up on that. You could still, you could have your own podcast and perform. There's lots, the internet has opened up a whole world for people. Don't give up on that. You got lots of time.
okay, I'll think about that. That's some good advice. I'm thinking about that now.
You said you've got lots of downtime. What do you have to lose?
I do have downtime. I have no reliable downtime because my health is my theme in my life is this, the body decides. So I often make plans, but when you're disabled, the body decides. And that's okay, you know. I mean, there are worse things. Um, but right now I'm going to write. Don't ask me what I'm working on next because it's a whole thing. Um,
I was going to. That's almost always my last question. What do you mean it's a whole thing?
well, that's a whole thing because I started this book, right? And there's some lovely writing in it, and it's fantastic. And I'm doing it, and it's third person, and I've got all these different characters going, and I like it, and it's vengeful and ah. And I realized about 120 pages in that I'm not sure I can live with it. I couldn't feel
Why?
it. I couldn't feel it. I couldn't feel my own book. I couldn't. It was going very dark, and so I sent it to my agent, and we both agreed that yeah, there's good writing, but number one, and this does guide things sometimes. She didn't think she could sell it because it was all about the church. Basically, the story, I don't mind telling you the story. The story was vengeful nuns working from the inside against
Make
all
it
these
a movie.
clerical abuses.
There's
Yeah.
your opportunity to work in the movies. Write a
Yeah.
screenplay.
Yeah, because what sells as a movie and what sells as a book are very different things.
That
And
just
so
sounds
for
like a
ex-
typical horror movie. Like we watch so many
yeah,
horror movies about the
yeah,
church in my house, and I'm
yeah,
Catholic.
yeah. So maybe I'll keep it. It's in a drawer somewhere. But anyway, I spent a lot of time on it, but it's not wasted. I mean, writing is never wasted. So if anybody listening out there who's writing and you feel like, oh, I can't, like nothing you write is wasted. It's all learning. I'm still learning very much how to write. And you know, but the market's very tough, you see, because like I could not sell the Good Women book, Good Women of Safe Harbor, um, to America. We couldn't, we sold it to Germany and we sold it to Israel, but we couldn't sell it to the Americans. Couldn't sell this book to the Americans. Um, yeah. People don't want the gentle hum books, right? They want the girl on the train with the dragon and the tattoo and, you know, they
Well,
want,
but
you know,
it's funny though, because right now there seems to be this, and there was a time where I used to ask authors if someone was going to play these characters in a movie, who would it be? And I've stopped asking that question because I don't think every book should be a movie. And there seems to be this feeling now that every book that does well needs to have a TV show or a movie. And it's not that one is better than the other, but there is only one book that I've ever read that I thought the show was better than the book. And it was because it was Crazy Rich Asians. And it's not that the book is bad, it's that the opulence of Singapore is something that I could not have imagined myself.
it's
And
crazy.
so it put me in a place that I could not have even imagined. And so that is why I thought the movie was better than the book. But
Yeah,
otherwise,
that's interesting.
I always think the book is better, like almost always.
I'm trying to think of book to movie that I really liked. I don't know. I liked
It's not
Stranger
that
Than
I don't like them, it's that I always think the book is better.
I liked Stranger Than Fiction better than the book it was based on. And yeah. And I'm really glad I raised this now because you know, like, do you think I can remember the name of that book that I know so well? Ugh. Anyway, The Rage. Um, Yeah, I think people did ask me about that about Good Women. I don't think Good Women necessarily is very cinematic because it's so internal. I think that Brink could make an interesting movie. The only reason I would love to see that made into something is I am interested in anything getting made about women and gender-based violence. I am just interested in making sure people don't just we need to have people are not having conversations about this. And if people take away nothing else from my book, I just want them to take away some empathy for my characters because that's what I'm all about is empathy. But also just think about it. Just ask yourself this question. Ask it, is it any better? And what are you doing? What are you doing today? What are we doing as sisters? What are we doing? So yeah. But yeah, I don't know what. So now I got put that book away, I got blocked. And now I'm toying with something else. I'm toying about writing about a doctor, having a character as a doctor. But I don't know. I gotta wait for the thing for me is I gotta wait for the character to come to me. I need she has to come to me, right? I can't force
Do you
it.
write every day when you're well? Do you try to write every day?
No.
When do you write? How do you decide when you're going to write?
When when it comes to me, I mean, I'm very privileged in that I understand I don't have kids. I've never had any kids. I don't have a job outside my house right now. So there's some privilege to the disability, right? You gotta read, you gotta stretch for it. But so I can kind of do it whenever I want. The only pressure is that the time. So if I know if I don't get a book written this year, I'm not getting another book out for another 4,
Because it takes
right?
so long to get from start to finish.
Well, sure. And the way authors get paid too, like you get an advance on your book, but you don't get it all at once. So you get a third and a third and a third. So you get your advance when you sign the contract. Then you get part when you get a manuscript and part when it's published. And that's a 2-year endeavor. So there's all those things to think about. And I'm very fortunate to have a spouse who supports me financially right now, even though that's not ever something I had hoped, a situation I'd hoped to be in. I'm grateful for it. And so I recognize all the privileges that I have. Um, but no, not necessarily because I sometimes feel like I really need to be inspired. That's when I get the work, when I get something really good.
I just find it so interesting because some authors insist that they write every day, even if they write nothing but a grocery list or something that they have to write every day. And others only write when they've got a book on the go. And other than that, that's all they do. And they're
Yep.
not concerned about writing in between.
Yep. I mean, so right now, like in the last little while, since the book came out in April, I've been writing little things like writing paragraphs about, well, what's this book about for you, and what's your inspiration, and what's your so that kind of thing, writing about the book, because you do have to really have that in your head when you're doing this kind of thing. Um, and writing things like that. But no, I don't subscribe to that notion, if that's is subscribed the word. Whatever. I don't attach myself to that because I think it's pressure and I think it's good practice. But
Mhm.
again, I wasn't a kid growing up wanting to be a writer, so disciplined with it, right? This is kind of something I fell into.
Side quest,
Yeah.
a side
Side
quest that has
quest. I'm going
been
to use that. I'm going to
successful.
use that. I like
Like
that.
I'm going to use broke down giraffe. Any other questions from in the room before we wrap up? No? No? Everybody liked it. I'm supposed to tell you everybody liked it. I also, before we
Tell
go,
all their friends. Tell all their friends.
Bobbi, what are you looking forward to? I don't care if it's what you have for breakfast tomorrow. I'm just wondering, ending on a
Um,
high note, what are you looking forward to?
I'm looking, I don't think it's going to happen, but let me tell you what I cling to looking forward to. I want the time that I'm living in to improve in some sort of dramatic and hopeful way. And I am looking forward to the end of tyrannical leaders. I'm looking forward to peace. I know that sounds lofty, and if you'd asked me 3 years ago if I ever thought I would speak that sentence, I am so saddened by what's happening to everybody and everywhere. And I'm so upset of the death of expertise and that science is going away and measles is back. Like as a doctor, this world is so disappointing. And so I'm waiting for the day or the time or the month or the week or the year when it doesn't feel so disappointing all the time, when I can see that at the end of my life that there's some light to things. So that's what I'm looking forward to. Um, and I look the day-to-day thing is I just look forward to another day in my little house here in rural Nova Scotia with my my lovely husband. And I look forward to moving into a new book. I can't tell you how much I look forward to that. Right now, I'm really looking forward to opening David Sedaris's new book.
Mhm.
And I'm, want to read and be and peaceful, right? Peaceful at home and peaceful in the world. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Bobbi, thanks so much for making time for us. I know it's much later
Yeah.
where you are than where it is here. We still have daylight, and I'm certain you don't.
No, no, it's 10 after 11.
Yeah. Thank you so much for
Listen,
making
Sam,
time for us
thank
and
you.
for
I'm
the
honored.
book.
I'm honored.
And we'll stay in touch.
Yeah, we should do that. I just want to say how honored I am. I know that you have so many books to choose from. It's such an honor that you chose mine. So thank you so much. Really
Well,
appreciate
thank your publicist for suggesting me. Take care.
it. Thanks so much. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.